Hey there folks, I'm Mark, the host of Spectrum Pulse. Welcome back to the new channel, cause it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. And here I was making the assumption that this was going to be a pretty mild week on the Hot 100. And maybe in comparison to a regular album bomb it kind of is, but I'll admit I completely forgot that Khalid put out a project that did spark some significant shifts on the Hot 100 for his surprising number of charting singles. Now I'll argue it didn't quite move the needle that much, and this still does feel like a typical post-album bomb week, but it is worth mentioning at least, even if the album will wind up being a perennial occupant on the trailing edge, because let's be honest, Khalid is just not that interesting. But let's put that aside for now, let's get into our top 10, where to the surprise of absolutely nobody, Old Town Road by Lil Nas X featuring Billy Ray Cyrus on the remix holds the number 1. And outside of the airplay, it's just dominant across the board. And you'd be surprised how quickly it's getting radio presence too, which sparks some predictions that it'll be dominant for weeks or even months ahead. Yeah, no. Don't get me wrong, with Billy Ray Cyrus, this is a better song, but the fastest way to kill this kind of meme is overexposure. And once the controversy dries up, I can see this falling off, especially when some serious competition rears up. And not to disparage Lil Nas X's success, but the top 10's been in a real point of weakness for months now. And while I applaud his ability to capitalize on that, it won't last, especially with Taylor Swift right around the corner. Now what it means for now is that Sunflower by Post Malone and Sway Lee has zero chance to break past number 2, though I doubt that would have happened anyway, given how the sales and radio are both down despite stable streaming. Then we got Wow by Post Malone up to number 3. Streaming is stable, and it does seem to have some radio traction, but the sales are shrinking. And while we're on that topic, 7 Rings by Ariana Grande is down to number 4 and bleeding in all categories, except bizarrely on-demand streaming, so I'm curious where that little bit of traction came from. Now what doesn't have that is Without Me by Halsey at number 5, which is only where it is because of radio inertia as it's bleeding everywhere else. Hell, what'll probably take its place across the board is Sucker by the Jonas Brothers up to number 6, which sees the top spot on the radio and have some pretty good sales to match. A little bit more streaming and it could have some real traction to get higher. Hell, it forced back Please Me by Cardi B and Bruno Mars down to number 7, but given as it looks like they finally yanked radio support, I can see this falling off everywhere given how it's, again, fallen everywhere else. But now we've got the first real beneficiary of the Khalid album bomb as it is, Better up to number 8. And you know, I like this song when it's on the Sun City EP, and if he's got the stable streaming to hold the position, and it looks like he peaked on the radio this week, I'm kind of okay with this being in the top 10, at least for a little while. Then we got Middle Child by J. Cole up a slot to number 9 on streaming, unsurprising, that's the story of the song consistently, and end things off, Happier by Marshmello and Bastille is still in the top 10 at the very bottom, and I can only thank God the radio is keeping this afloat, it's finally fading away. And on that pleasing subject, are losers and dropouts, and there were a few really big ones in the latter category. Sure, they were all pretty much losers last week, and I won't say I'm all that happy that Twerk by City Girls and Cardi B is gone, or that ZZ by Kodak Black featuring Travis Scott and Offset clinched its year-end spot, but the dropouts for Millionaire by Chris Stapleton, Girl Like You by Jason Aldean, and Pure Cocaine by Lil Baby, they were all to be expected. They were losing last week. Now for other losers, yeah, Billie Eilish lost a considerable amount from the album bomb, as you would expect, and I'm not sure how much long-term traction even the high-placing songs will have, but let's go through them all at once. All the Good Girls Go to Hell hit 92, Zanny crashed at 86, My Strange Addiction withdrew to 71, You Should See Me in a Crown toppled down to 68, Wish You Were Gay faded to 51, and When the Party's Over hit 39. And they also continued to take Juice WRLD's Robbery down to 59, which looks to be flopping even harder than I expected. Now beyond all that, look, I'm not surprised that Double Up by the late Nipsey Hussle featuring Dom Kennedy and Belly went to 75, or that One That Got Away by Michael Ray crashed to 88, but I am a little bit surprised at the abrupt losses for Put a Date on It by Yo Gotti and Lil Baby down to 83. It rose up so quickly, and now looks like it's leaving just as fast. Now where things get a little bit weird, they come in our gains and our returning entries. Well, not really the latter ones where My Bad by Khalid returned at 55, and Let Me Down Slowly by Alec Benjamin featuring Alessia Cara hit 98 because the radio needs to fill time somehow. And sure, Khalid saw some gains here as well. Talk was up at 18 and Saturday Nights is up to 57. But what caught me off guard were all the big country pickups. I mean, I predicted Tequila by Dan and Shay would rebound to 38, sure, but I didn't expect the non-country of Look What God Gave Her by Thomas Rhett would surge up to 48, or that Good As You by Kane Brown would hit 53, or that Make It Sweet by Old Dominion would rise up to 60, or even that Rumor by Lee Brice would make 78. Hell, I'm even a little bit surprised that God's Country by Blake Shelton wrote off some really great sales off the debut to 49. Seems like the song might actually have some legs and stick around, and I can only hope that at some point beyond the hook it actually kind of grows on me. Again, it's in the lane of something that would work, it's just not yet. Now, beyond the country, we also have some pickups for Suge by DaBaby up to 63, and Racks in the Middle by Nipsey Hussle, Roddy Ricch, and Hit Boy up to 26. Kind of surprising both these have traction, but different story. But what continues to more alarm me are the gains for I've Been Waiting by the late Lil Peep, I Love McConan, and Fall Out Boy to 67. Seriously, this left a really bad taste in my mouth a month ago. I've got no desire to see this become a hit. On a slightly better note, though, Don't Call Me Up by Mabel got a mild boost to 80, and Pop Out by Polo G and Little TJ went to 89, so alright, look, both songs are disposable. I'm just kind of curious to see what'll happen. But again, we do have a few more new arrivals than I expected, starting off with number 100, Victory Lap by Nipsey Hussle featuring Stacy, Barthe. So I'll admit, I am a little bit surprised in the wave of support for Nipsey Hussle has continued to get as much as he has. It's rare that we get multiple weeks of posthumous new arrivals, but okay, here we are. Now, this being the title track and opener from his last album, and I don't know, it's solid. In a way, there's not really much I can say about it, as it falls into a similar lane as other Nipsey Hussle songs that I've covered here. The content and flow is solid, but not precisely gripping for me in some of the detail of the flexing. And while I like the blend of Stacy Barthe's vocals with the knocking hand clap, piano, and synths, it doesn't really do much more beyond that for me. Maybe some of that has to do with the mix blending. The fidelity of the production doesn't quite match cleanly with the vocal line, but overall, again, I'm nitpicking. I just think it falls among music that I can respect, but for which I'm just not that much of a fan. Not a bad opener for the album though, so I don't know. I'll take it. Number 99, Big Ol' Freak by Megan Thee Stallion. Okay, of the songs that I have covered on Ideal Hit that I had no expectations would cross over, this is certainly one of those in that category. I mean, I knew it had traction, but Megan Thee Stallion had the sort of charisma and verve that for me seems to embody artists who should be outright stars, but wind up just outside the mainstream to the utter exasperation of all their fans. But it looks like she's here now, and in a just world, I think she'll actually be able to build some momentum off a solid trap groove and a ton of charisma and presence. She can knock this sort of sex song right out of the park, and I'm so happy she's finally ready to introduce some serious competition into the scene. As it is, I've talked about it before, it's a great sensual trap song. Real looking forward to that follow through, because again, I want to see this get big. Number 95, Immortal by Aventura. Not gonna lie, when I first saw the name of this act and this song that I didn't recognize, I was convinced by some miracle we had gotten some power metal or rock act on the Hot 100, and that could have been kick-ass. But no, Aventura is actually the original group of Romeo Santos known for bachata music, who had a run of modest success in the 2000s. And normally I wouldn't want to say modest for an act that actually had a decade-long run, but they had one hit that barely broke into the Hot 100 in 2005. They actually had a remix of somebody else that remixed their song and did better. And while they had a string of hits on the Latin charts, worldwide they don't seem to have the same ubiquity as so many Spanish-speaking acts have had in that time or today. But whatever, they're now on their second reunion and back with this single, and you know, I can see the appeal of this sound at least. I like the plucky organic flutters of percussion, the more developed bass and guitar lines that are doing more, and how effectively the transitions punch through a pretty organic mix. But then we go to our frontman, Romeo Santos, and some of these lyrics, and look, I might be losing something in the translation, but for as much as he wants to call upon science to fail to explain his love, which he frequently equates to madness, I mean, you'd think you get a little bit more tension or intensity than the very languid vibes we get there now. Again, not precisely saying it's bad. I'd probably prefer this to most clunky and formulaic reggaeton we normally get, but I kind of doubt it'll have much staying power for me or the public at large. Number 93, Right Back by Khalid.
I know we've been falling off track. Bring it right back.
Okay, we got 4 Khalid songs to get through, and let's start off with what's probably my favorite song from the album. The muted, bassy synth well that almost seems to capture an old school 90s R&B melody off the thin snap. And while you can tell that Khalid doesn't really seem to be bringing a lot of soul or presence to this, I can't deny that Stargate gives him probably one of his catchiest hooks to date. And that kinda works for an intimate moment where he's trying to resuscitate a failing relationship, and that tight framing works for something this small and intimate and effective. So yeah, it's not a great song, but it's a really nice little song in comparison with something like, I don't know, number 87, Bad Luck by Khalid. Okay, so I've gone on the record saying that I tend to like Khalid with a little bit more guitar and liquid groove, which you'd think he would get with some of that lumpy bass. But did they have to pick one of the thinnest wheedling of guitar tone to back him up here, especially with that underwhelming falsetto and that vocal arrangement on the hook? But that's probably the root of the problem. I've always thought if Khalid's gonna bring a richer timbre to bear in his voice, you need production that can match him effectively. And this just sounds undercooked, with a reverb trying to fill in tonal body that's just not there. It doesn't help that the lyrics play to a lot of self-flagellating platitudes about how he's in love with bad luck, and he's only getting more self-destructive thanks to more money, more problems. You've heard this all before. And here's the thing. Even if that's true, it gets kind of really irksome how powerless Khalid frames himself while demanding that she take all the responsibility for engaging with him, which is a level of self-pity that can get really intolerable, especially given the soul and sincerity that he's trying to bring to bear here. So yeah, not really a fan of this at all. Next, number 84, Don't Pretend by Khalid featuring Safe.
Show me, don't pretend.
Okay, so apparently the issue from the guitars before is that we need to make them more acoustic and more brittle than ever before. He gets a crackling background mix with even less developed atmosphere beyond some faint synth flutes. And while Khalid might really like Safe's wispy vocal tone, I sure as hell don't. It sounds like a thinner, less impressive version of what Khalid can already deliver. Not a good sign for a pretty undercooked song, because then we get to the content, which is basically Khalid in a very clingy situation where he knows that he never had her beyond his own thoughts online and that he really has to move on. But then you have the hook, which is all about him wanting her to show something and not pretend. Honestly though, I think the only pretensions are coming from him wanting something that's just not gonna work. It's clinging in a really undercooked and awkward way. Again, just a really unflattering song, and again, not the way it should. So yeah, not good. Let's move on. Number 58, Out of My Head by Khalid featuring John Mayer. Okay, so now we get the big John Mayer crossover single, and I can barely complete that sentence with a straight face, folks. I'm sorry. I mean, seriously, you would think that Khalid would want to avoid associations with John Mayer at all costs. He at least has a groove and soul that John Mayer never had at his peak. But you know what, for mellow, milquetoast writing, it kind of makes sense that he wants to work with Mayer this time around. But all that John Mayer really contributes to this song is a slow, languid solo midway back in the mix that doesn't really match any of the groove or much of anything in the song. Kind of a shame, because this track actually does have a bit of tightness, and Khalid is kind of okay over it for a Charlie Puth-esque sort of vibe on this driving song where he wants something more to materialize with his partner in the car. In other words, I can see some potential maybe this working, but I kept feeling that this should be more than the sum of its parts. That's all. It's not bad, but not great either. Number 41, Kill This Love by Blackpink.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You know, if K-pop acts like Blackpink and BTS are gonna keep making inroads into the Hot 100, I really wish I could find a way to like more of it, because I've been underwhelmed by a lot of their crossover efforts with American acts, and while this song broke all kinds of YouTube records, I'm not sure what, if any, staying power will keep this visible in the Hot 100 outside the diehard fans. Now granted, I've tended to like Blackpink on their own a little bit more, and I can see some of the appeal of this. The girls have a little bit more natural, strident charisma, and while the flip flips from Korean to English feels clumsy as ever, there's at least an attempt at an edge with that marching band horn section that you cannot convince me didn't come from a synthesizer. And even if the lyrics seem like they could kind of work in terms of a hyperbolic, oversold breakup anthem, that's kind of what you get in girl groups for. But what always hurts my enjoyment in so much K-pop is a lack of structured transitions. The blaring horns that feel imported from 4 years ago, the trap passages, the more traditional pop pieces, not even the cadence of the groove from piece to piece can feel cohesive, which means that we're stuck flipping across ideas that don't coalesce together. So yeah, of course I can see the appeal of a song like this, a lot of flash, a lot of garish ideas all stuffed together, but until some of these K-pop acts discover cohesion or realize the value of some actual flow, I'm just not going to be as interested as I want to be. I mean, some good ideas, it just doesn't come together. And finally, number 27, Cool by the Jonas Brothers. Oh, I heard bad things about this one. Not just that it sucked, but that even if it could be compared to the white bread adult alternative that you would hope the Jonas Brothers brand of pop would be able to sidestep. But nope, this might wind up being one of the most embarrassing things the Jonas Brothers have ever released. And I'm honestly not even sure where to start with it. I mean, I could focus on how much of the melodic cadence of the verses is a straight up ripoff of Lady Gaga's You and I, with Jordan Sparks' No Air for the hook with a slice of Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, and yet somehow seems to have pitched all the groove and momentum that was the biggest redeeming factor to Sucker for a clunker that's got none of the impact. Hell, all the songs I just referenced, they are all better than this. Yes, for as much as the Jonas Brothers are obviously trying to reference 80s flair, at least Duran Duran knew to have some genuine flash and groove and sensuality, none of which is helped here by a tinny guitar solo that seems like it's going to be giving up midway through. In fact, the production as a whole is a garbage fire. Why do the vocals sound so canned against the lumpy beat and the gutless acoustics, where the fuzz is clashing with all the falsetto vocals? Ryan Tedder apparently co-produced this, and I know for a fact he's mixed better songs than this. This is so disappointing. But then we have the lyrics. And maybe it's just a really stupid idea to brag about you being like Post Malone when you get home, or winning like Game of Thrones when said winning is almost guaranteed to lead to bloody losses in the end for you, or cramming in a bunch of references to a 2016 Nick Jonas album that almost nobody remembers. But I think my biggest issue might be with the central premise of the song. If you're gonna make a track about how damn cool you are, which is high bar indeed, most artists really should not do it. Maybe considering adding lyrics that talk about doing something cool or interesting, or maybe make it feel infectious instead of like a strand of gonorrhea that's sweeping through the frat house, or at the very least add some sort of groove or punch to it. Even Thomas Rhett can remember to get this right. I've heard some people compare this to a Train song, but say what you will about Pat Monahan, he at least used to bring some eccentricity to his writing and try harder than this. It honestly reminds me more of Bruno Mars's The Lazy song pumped up on steroids. In other words, yeah, this blows, and I can't imagine a universe where this does not work without irony. And yeah, without a doubt, Cool by the Jonas Brothers is the worst of this week, probably one of the worst of the year, followed by Don't Pretend by Khalid and Safe as a dishonorable mention. Seriously, I think Mike Posner might be cooler than the Jonas Brothers this week. Now the best, you know what, it's close, but I'm gonna give it to Big Ol' Freak by Megan Thee Stallion, just edging out right back by Khalid. Most because Khalid doing better than normal is not to be overshadowed by the breakout of a genuine superstar, and yes, I think Meg Thee Stallion absolutely is in that lane. Next up, honestly, these next few weeks, they seem pretty thin outside of maybe a BTS album bomb. We'll see where their streaming goes. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but we'll see. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see